Hi everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. What we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how to create a background for a canvas or for a your art journal. And what I really like is I love earthy colors. I really like earthy colors. And this particular technique, kids love doing this because they can make a mess. First thing we're going to do, whether it's a canvas or a journal page, we're going to prime it with gesso. And I'm using Permelba gesso. Foam brush not necessary. I like using Permelba gesso because it's made with ground marble and pure titanium white pigment, which makes it stronger and has amazing tooth. And if you guys follow my videos, you're probably sick and tired of hearing me say that, but you know, in case somebody hasn't watched one of the other videos that I didn't mention about the gesso, then good that I mention it all the time. Okay, so that's it. Okay, I just used a really old gungy bristle brush, not nylon, because it creates some texture. Now, when I'm working with gessoed pages with texture like this, especially with this amazing gesso, is I leave it aside to dry. I don't use a heat gun. But what I've done, magic of television, is I have one that's already prepared. Okay, it is a little bit wet on the side. It hasn't completely dried yet, but you know what? Let's see what happens. I like showing all my bloopers on camera because then you can see how to handle it. So I'm going to grab my earth tone colors. Now what I have, these are my earth tones, and when I'm doing formal pet portraits, I use these earth tones as is. I can color mix to get something close, but when you're working on when I'm working on a formal pet portrait or a wildlife portrait, it's especially where time is an issue, then I'll use this. But I mean, you can create something like yellow oxide by taking a little bit of raw sienna with a little bit of cad yellow. You can create burnt sienna. I mean, you can create any of these things with your primary colors. But you know what? This is to be a creative time. Let's not worry too much about color mixing right now. First thing I'm going to do is start with the lightest color, yellow oxide. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is, and this is kind of cool. Oh, before you get started, if you have a paint scraper, I should have had this prepared, sorry. My brayer's in the way. Okay. You need a paint scraper. And what we're going to do is, because we're going to stain the paper. Now you can get these little types of scrapers, okay, like this. You can go to a home building store and get, this is for wallpaper paste. These I find that if it gets too warm, that these actually start to bend and form different shapes. But if if you've got good pressure, you can do one large coat. So these are okay. I prefer them better for canvas. But what I like to do is, when we were looking for some siding, there were these chips for siding, and these are sample chips, and I grabbed a few, and then, well, I'm not going to throw them away. So I cut some for some smaller pieces. I've got this nice big one, which will help me get a large piece. But at the same time, is that these are textured, so I could actually use this, okay, on wet paint to stamp and remove paint. Not stamping, but you're actually removing paint with this nice texture. So I'm going to use a small piece for this demonstration and put this back. So I just cut this one just to make it a little easier to handle. The whole doesn't matter. Okay, so now I'm going to put a strip of paint, yellow oxide, right here. And then I'm going to take, and you can use a credit card if you want, or a hotel key card. I'm going to take this and I'm going to scrape. How amazing is that texture? And you notice how some parts are taking, some parts aren't? And that's with the gesso, the ridges of that gesso. And you have some left over. Now you can come up a little bit more. And you can go right to the edge here. It doesn't matter what table Joe builds for me. It's never big enough. And what you want to do is you want to scrape, 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 scrape. Okay, I'm in the way, sorry. Now if I go the opposite way, I'll get a different look on the bottom. So that's why you don't need much for this technique. The key is to scrape the paint, because all you're doing is staining the paper. And you ask yourself, what do you do with all that paint that you have now on your scraper? Grab yourself, move this aside, grab myself an old journal that I'm starting to work on. This is a really grungy one that I made. I'm going to actually use this to show a bookbinding technique to actually add a hard cover on it. Just scrape the excess paint. That way there's no waste. Put that aside. Don't waste anything. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to let this dry, but because we scraped this, okay, it won't take long to dry at all. I'm going to just do this. Now, you can also do this with different colors, and I will have videos showing different colors, because I'm finding that some people, depending on, people could get into a little bit of a, what I call brain fart, and where they kind of, they don't know what to paint. They know they want to create art, but they don't know what to do. And just, these videos are just to kickstart you. Not even kickstart you, but give you a jump off point where you can actually get some ideas. Okay, so I can tell you what colors you can use, but it's always better to show you. And the reason why I like to show you is because if something goes wrong, or something happens that wasn't planned, 99.9% of the time, I make it work. And what better way than to, show that to you on camera. Okay, nice and dry, but I'm just going to rub this a little bit until I don't feel any warm spots. I don't want to put hot paint on warm paper. Okay, there we go. That page actually could be used as is. That's a beautiful, beautiful look. Like when you look at that, you think of texture. Although there isn't much, you can feel a little bit. There isn't much physical texture. That's visual texture. Now, cap my acrylic paint. And now what I'm going to do is, this is where you can choose your darker colors. And what I may do is I may do a few of these to show you the different colors. So if we put raw sienna on top of this, raw sienna and yellow oxide is pretty close. Okay, so I'm going to do this with burnt sienna. Okay, and now this time I'm actually going to go the other way. You don't need a lot. And this paint, this Prima acrylic, is really, it's got a lot of pigment in it. And what you're going to get here, because we're going across the grain now, you're getting a different look. Now there is a bit of a time issue with this one here, because we have to work when the paint gets tacky. I've got too much paint there. I'm going to go into my journal. I'm just going to scrape off the excess. I don't know if you guys can hear Chaos crying. Scrape, 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 scrape. I'm going a little bit faster now. Because we have to do this part while it's tacky. We're now going to remove some paint. Okay? So, the best way that I like to do this is to take a mister bottle, put my hand underneath it, and spray. Open my fingers, and what happens is I get splotches of water. Splats. I do this technique with watercolors using Spectrafix. Okay, I'm just going to wipe my hands. Now let this sit for about, I don't know, 15, 20 seconds. Get yourself about, now you should, if possible, have clean paper towel for this, unless you don't mind the, you know, if this has watercolor on it, it will transfer on. And what is happening is wherever the paint splotches or the water splotches dripped, okay, it's wetting the burnt sienna that we just put on there. We're going to take our paper towel, put it on top, press, and the paper towel is going to absorb the water and the paint. And I think the paint dried too. Usually you can see the water splotches with the actual paint color. And lift off. No, it didn't work. What you're looking for, I'll have to wipe. See, there's something that didn't work out the way I wanted. But have no fear. Let's do it again. I'm going to rub it off the way I just did the other ones. Okay? There we go. Wherever there's a water spot, I'm going to rub the paint off. I think I scraped too much. I think I scraped too much. I pushed it a little too hard. There we go. It's very warm in here with all the video lights. But that's what you're looking for. Okay, well, now I know I waited too long. So what do? Let's add another layer. Let's add another layer. Let's do this with, and also the contrast isn't very high. Let's do this with burnt umber. So I'm going to work a little bit faster this time. I'm going to go across the other way now. Okay. A little bit faster. I actually used the cut side of the, wasn't paying attention. Don't use the cut side, use the actual flush side. That way you don't get any heavy ridges. If you get ridges, who cares? Okay, water. You want to get it before it dries. And just wait a few seconds. Excuse me. That's better. Look, the paint's actually coming through. That's what you're looking for. And I'm just pushing really hard. Excuse me, where the dots are. There we are. That's what I'm going for. There. And now what I can do is quickly take a baby wipe and come in where the splotches are, and I'm just going to feather the edges a little bit. Okay, but make sure you always turn your baby wipe so you're not putting the paint back in there. Oops, there's a spot here. There we are. That's nice contrast. So as I'm using the baby, and when I do this with oils, I basically use like a odorless turpentine substitute, but I'll do this with a Clorox wipe. But as you start rotating, make sure you use the clean area. You can use this part here, like this used part, to put this back. But what I like to do is when I do this, and as it's clean, it's actually removing the paint, is I can come in, and now I can kind of go over some areas, because the paint is still a smidgen tacky. It's the video lights that aren't cooperating. And as I start rubbing, the smaller paint splotches, or water splotches I should say, are coming up. Chaos is actually chewing up my Strathmore paper. Oh. Now, this cloth here, I will let it dry. Then I will rinse it under water to get rid of any of the baby wipe lotions in here. And I will actually use this as part of a background where I can collage it right onto thinner paper to create some texture. There we go. How nice is that? Okay, so you see I'm just kind of rubbing, I'm leaving some, the edges, I kind of like leaving the edges a little bit darker. And then what you have now is that you can then take this, let it dry, and then you can actually glaze another color on top. Now when I say glaze, glaze means transparency. So you can put another color on top, and I'm just going to use alizarin crimson as an example because alizarin crimson is transparent. If I were to scrape alizarin crimson, everything that's here will show through, but it'll be a bit of a different hue, a little bit of a different color. Because visually, the yellow oxide and burnt sienna and burnt umber will show through the alizarin crimson, knocking it down. You can use these, but you'd have to add some flow medium or some water or some type of medium to thin them down because these are all opaque. Okay, and opaque is like think of a barrier. All right, so with this, all I would do is basically just let this dry. And then from here, you can leave it as is, or you can basically, you know, like I said, glaze another color, but you want it to be transparent. One nice color with this, and you can make that color with a burnt sienna with flow medium or water. Flow medium is better than water because flow medium is actually won't break down the strength of the pigment. If you add too much water to acrylics, it actually breaks down the glue. Transparent red iron oxide is really nice, and my favorite red transparent oxide paints, transparent yellow, orange, and red, are made by M. Graham. They are absolutely beautiful. I'll do videos with that as well. Okay, so this one is finished, and looking at it this way, I'm visualizing it on, now a post shot being a quick study, I would do this on this first, then take my ideas and then go onto a canvas. Whether it's a canvas or a journal page, I'm looking at this, I can see some beautiful Tuscan type of look, wine bottle, some grapes or wine bottle with some onions and a knife there, or onions with some celery and carrots, you know, something really nice. And that's what I see when I look at this. Okay, that's why it's speaking to me and telling me, my eyes start looking at it and I can see some things developing. So hopefully these will, you know, these little background videos give you a jump off point to start creating your own little masterpieces.